Today, we are joined by Elizabeth Dall, a certified women's nutrition coach, food freedom expert, and behavior change coach who helps women break free from the diet cycle, make peace with food, and create sustainable, healthy habits. With a holistic approach rooted in mindset shifts, self-compassion, and practical strategies, Elizabeth empowers women to stop overeating, embrace their bodies, and achieve their health goals without guilt, restriction, or dieting. Lastly, she is the host of the Women of Wellness podcast, where she shares expert insights, actionable tools, and inspiring stories to support you on your wellness journey. Welcome, Elizabeth, to That Fitness Couple.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited today.
We are honored to have you.
Yeah, and so today, the primary topic that we really wanted to jump into with you is making peace with food and also breaking free of emotional eating, which we know will resonate with a lot of our listeners. And with that being said, what is it that drew you to those particular topics as something that you wanted to work with women on?
So I started in this industry as a personal trainer. And what happened was I was giving my clients programs, right? Some meal plans, some exercise plans. I was working with them a couple times a week in the gym. And I was giving them these programs to then take home and follow. And they were coming back, not getting results because they weren't following the plan. And, I was taught, well, follow the plan, right? The textbook perfect plan, and you get results. And I was really frustrated because I was like, why aren't you doing this? And I realized that behavior is a very important piece of creating any sort of health change. And that's what led me to go down the path of, the psychology behind behavior change and how do we actually fit a quote textbook perfect plan or some sort of health plan into an imperfect life, a busy life, an emotional life, things like that would come up. And so that's really what started this whole path for me was that I started with the follow the plan, which the diet industry is really good at, right? And then realized that there is so much more depth that we have to work through to create lasting behavior change.
Okay,
So good.
This story sounds way too familiar because that's exactly how it began for us too. Early on in my career, I had no problem as the trainer, as the quote expert following the nutrition plan that I wrote for myself, but I would probably spend, 2 to 3 hours putting together what I thought was the perfect plan for this person after we did the full intake on food preferences, what their schedule looked like, what their exercise regimen was. And every time I handed this over, I felt so proud of that work that I did for those 2 hours, handed it to them only to hear exactly what you heard. Not even a week later, yeah, I can't follow this. And
Kind of like being a parent or a teacher, It's like nobody wants to follow. I want to know, did this start as a journey for yourself, though, before even your clients? Can we go back even before you became a personal trainer?
Yeah, we can. I was actually on the track of nursing. So I was planning to become a nurse. And then I got a particular assignment on what we called the neuro rehab floor. And it was a mix of, some neurological things, but also a lot of preventable lifestyle illnesses, right? Lots of diabetes, loss of limbs, things like that. And um, I started to see the need for prevention. I'm so grateful for nurses. I think they do a fantastic job. And then I realized too, I didn't want to be on the reactive side of things. I didn't want to be on the treatment. I wanted to be on the prevention. I wanted to help prevent someone from getting to that point because it was really hard to watch some people suffer because of lifestyle choices. So yeah, that's really what started me into I want to be on the preventative side.
Amen. I love that story so much. I think all of us have some type of a shift, right? That happens, that drives us. Like we think we're on the path, and then all of a sudden this little thing happens, and it's like, nope, it's not where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be here. I love what you're doing now. Did you want to ask a question?
yeah, no, where I wanted to go is, talk to us a little bit more about this idea of making peace with food. So when you say making peace with food, what is it specifically that you're referring to?
Oh, I love that question. Making peace with food is about having a confident relationship with food. Lots of women, especially, we have been conditioned to follow the quote rules, right? Make sure you measure this, weigh this, track this. Don't eat this, don't eat that, right? Restrict all of these rules. And, we did that in the name of weight loss or body change. And so we've kind of gotten away from our body's intuitive signals. And so what we do is we lose trust. We lose trust with our body when we are in that scenario. And so making peace with food is really about bringing the trust back into you and saying, I am capable of knowing and meeting the needs of my own body. We were born with that, right? That's a gift that we were born with. I have a 1-year-old and, she'll push the food away when she's full and it doesn't matter if she hasn't finished it. And it's crazy that, at some point in, our lives, we learn to ignore that or suppress those feelings. And healing your relationship with food is about rediscovering that and knowing that I can be safe with this. Not perfect. I think that's really important. We're not perfect with food, but a good relationship with food is safety and also being able to realign quicker when you get off track, right? Instead of spiraling out of control.
Everybody needs this. Like, yeah. So good. It's so good. Where do you think a lot of, let me ask it this way. What are the typical challenges that women come to you with? I mean, I know a lot of it is like disordered eating and disordered thought patterns and things, but what would you say is like the number one or two thing that you see when women start coaching with you?
Well, let's get to the root, since we've kind of been talking about the root of everything here. It's their relationship with their body. Because what happens typically when we get stuck in the diet cycle, that first step of the diet cycle, sabotage, all of that, is wanting to escape our bodies. There's something in us that says, I'm too heavy, I'm uncomfortable, I'm dissatisfied with my body, and I want to escape. And so when we have I like to call it messy, a messy relationship with our body, it trickles into a messy relationship with food, a messy relationship with exercise, because it's always about escaping your body. And I've worked with several women who have lost weight. And at the end of that process, they've said, I don't feel any better in my body. I don't love my body anymore, because they didn't do the work to heal that relationship first. So that's really the core of it. If we can start building that relationship, we can then learn to nurture and nourish that body to change rather than punish or shame it to change.
In you saying that, I had one of these epiphany type moments where I realized that probably for a lot of women, this starts when they're very young. You talked about losing, that confidence in their body, but I mean, how many women that starts in adolescence?
Yes.
And now here we are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s trying to correct a problem that we've lived with forever, but we don't even realize. We think that this started in my 20s when all of a sudden I started to gain weight that I never had before. But I'm sure that it probably goes way before that this starts.
Yeah, I actually have my clients go through a little bit of an exercise, because we get in this area because of comparison. Okay. And it's 3 different kinds of comparison. Comparison to an ideal or a standard, right? This is what I'm supposed to look like. Comparison to others. This is what she looks like. And then we do this as, a little bit older, comparison to ourselves of maybe what we were before we had babies, or, our comparison. And so it all stems from comparison. And we decide whenever that is that we are different, and that different equals wrong, right? Our body is different and it's wrong. And I have an interesting story about my own personal story that hopefully might help. I remember as a little kid, I had a favorite pair of shorts, and they were short and I loved them and I wore them all the time. As a little kid, you just like want to repeat the same clothes. And I have a very specific memory of my grandma telling my mom that those pants didn't look good. My legs were too big for those pants. And I think that like kind of started my story of, oh, my legs are too big, right? My legs are different than what they quote should be that she said. And then that's wrong. And so that's been a story that I've had to work on. And everyone has that, just like you said, Mike, like they all have that story where something came in and said, you're different, and that's not right.
Why do you think women are so emotionally tied to that? You know, your focus is to break free from this emotional eating. Why do you think we have so many emotions attached to that?
And that's a really good question. I think in general, women are more emotional, right? We feel on a different level. But I think the biggest thing is that the input is really strong, especially for women. We're getting a lot of noise from everywhere. We have a lot of friends that are trying this plan and this diet. And we, on social media, we get things that are catered to us. There's a lot of noise. And so I think when we see the noise, then we go back to, well, I need to be this way. And it becomes that emotional thing of, I have to be this way in order to almost be better, right? I think men and women are both, I agree in both of this, but women also are very ambitious sometimes, and they want to maybe prove themselves. And so this may feel like one area where it's like, I've got to prove that I can do this because I'm strong and I'm tough, and we want to create that persona.
Yeah, I think we're always looking for worthiness, right? Like just want to feel worthy of our position, our occupation, our spouse, my gosh, like you get a nice house and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, am I worthy? I mean, like it's crazy. And people are like, no. I'm like, oh yeah, you do, or a vacation or how about a nice dress? And someone's like, oh, that's such a nice dress. Like we're always belittling. And I think it always ties back to this worthiness issue. So how do we break free from some of this emotional noise in our brains?
Yeah. The first step is we have to build a relationship with our body. It's just like a significant other romantic relationship, right? If you ignore them, if you speak unkindly to them, if you're mean to them, that relationship's going to crumble, right? But if you are positive, you spend time with them, you spend time on that relationship is going to flourish. And so what I say is, commit to the positive outcome of this relationship, right? We've got to start connecting with our body. Start kind of going back to what we said earlier, is like, start rebuilding trust. Because a lot of women, especially when we've been in the diet cycle for years, we have a lot of evidence on one side that this is the only way this works for me, right? So I had a client once that macro counting was the only way she could lose weight. And she had a lot of evidence because that's the only way that she was able to lose weight. And as she started learning to trust her body, getting in tune with her body, she then was able to stop the macro counting and still lose the weight, which was very eye-opening for her. It helped her build some evidence on this side that, oh, my body and my body's cues can actually be trusted. So the first step is building that relationship with your body, committing to a positive relationship. And then from there, and we can go deeper on this, is starting to create mindfulness with that relationship, mindfulness with food, connecting your body and your brain with the food that you're eating.
Yeah, I would love to go there with regards to the mindfulness around food, because what we've typically seen as the biggest problem for people is that if you tell them, try to be mindful of what you're eating, that sounds well and good in theory. But if you've had all of these mixed signals happening for so many years, maybe it's because of the heavily processed diet that you're following. And even if you're following, again, or especially I should say, if you're following diet culture, you have a lot of processed foods that are, they're disguised as being, quote, healthy, but they're really anything but. And this creates this conundrum for people where they want to be mindful, but as soon as they start to change some of their eating habits, they're also fighting their physiology, right? Their body is still craving some of these foods that have taken them off path. So how do you bridge that gap between, again, where they are and where you're trying to take them with respect to mindful eating?
That's a great question. And I'm going to give you a funny analogy. It's my potty training analogy. So I have potty trained 2 kids so far. And I think this might, resonate with anyone that understands potty training or has potty trained. But what happens in the very beginning is you are trying to help that child learn those cues, right? They don't recognize those cues in their body. So at the very beginning, it's all hands on deck. You are home. You are not leaving. You're constantly asking them, do you need to go potty? Tell mom, right? And it's just all hands on deck. And then a couple days into it, they start to pick up on those signals and you have less accidents. And maybe you venture to the park. You're like, okay, we can go to the park. And then, a few days later, okay, maybe we can go to the mall or we can go to a store and we'll be okay because you understand. And eventually that child recognizes those cues anywhere. It doesn't matter. They're fine. It's the same thing with mindful eating. We've got to do a little potty training at first because we've either suppressed, ignored, forgotten, don't even know the cues. And we've got to kind of reignite them. We've got to identify them. And so what I say is I know we're busy. I know life is busy, but choose one meal per day where you can sit down and ask yourself, where am I at right now? Just as you're sitting down, where am I at? What do I feel? What does my body feel? How hungry am I on a scale of 1 to 10? And then as you eat, just be mindful. Pay attention. We don't realize probably how chaotic of eaters we are. And this will be a really eye-opening exercise. Pay attention to your food and then stop when you're 70 to 80% full. And I like to say it's like I could take 2 or 3 more bites, but I'd be over full. And we start to do the same thing that we do with potty training. We start to capture those cues. Oh, I know what hunger feels like. So I'm going to eat rather than ignore it or say, I'll get to you later. And I'm going to stop when I'm full because I know those cues. And I think that this is the number one thing that will help anyone get any health results they want. Because as soon as you can create balance with food, game changer. You can achieve any goal that you have with your health.
First of all, I love the analogy. I'm such an analogy girl, so I very much appreciated that. And I agree with you so much, Elizabeth, that mastering our body, our hunger cues, our eating leads to success in other places. And it's so crazy to me. Like sometimes you'll see people wildly successful in finance, but they are very unhappy with their bodies, very out of shape, lethargic, slow. And the crazy thing is, I don't know, would you agree with me that generally people who take care of themselves maybe you may not be like the most excelled, but like you tend to have success in other areas, whereas the opposite is not true.
Well, I think there tends to be a discipline, and I don't mean being disciplined or restrictive in that nature, but being disciplined with, hey, I am mindful and I understand I should be doing these things, and so I'm going to work at them, not perfect them. And I like the tactile nature of what you're talking about. I want to ask you though, when you're working with people, do you recommend that they journal this experience? Because if we're not going to count macros or calories or all that, which we are very much in agreement with, should they be at least tracking something in terms of being, again, aware of what's happening and be able to refer back to this information at some point in time?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think is important for people to track when we're specifically talking about the hunger and fullness cues is recognizing what your body feels. What do I feel like when I'm hungry for a meal? What do I feel like when I'm hungry for a snack? What do I feel like when I'm satisfied or a 10 Thanksgiving full, right? That was very visual for you. When I said Thanksgiving full or stuffed, you're like, okay, I know that's like over full. And so when we start to connect those cues, that's really helpful. I think the journaling is more important or more helpful when we get into the emotional side of things, because that's where that brings up some of those emotions rather than let's just make sure we've got these cues down. I know what to do, and then bring in journaling when we need to work through emotions.
Excellent. All right. Well, in terms of this, let's go to that next part then, the breaking free part of the emotional eating, because we know that, again, this is so deeply tied to the challenges that most women in particular have, and men too, because even though we are speaking a lot about women today, the fact of the matter is that even though men might not be innately as emotional as women, still their emotions are very much tied to their eating, and their eating is very much tied to their emotions. Or for maybe some gentlemen out there, it's their drinking. I mean, I know we're talking about food, but also alcohol plays a big role in this and is one of the primary drivers for why we have an obese society. It's not just food, it's drink as well. But I would love to hear your take on now making this transition from I'm aware of these cues and how I'm feeling to the actual emotional side and breaking free from that.
Yeah, and I always tell people emotional eating and emotions are not bad. I actually think they're a gift because it's telling us that something is off in our body and in our lives, right? It's giving us a cue. So as we've been saying, we're getting in tune with these cues. This is another cue that your body is saying something's off. You're stressed, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, right? And an emotional eating episode is actually an opportunity to say something's off. And I can see that as a gift. And then what we can do is kind of react to that and work on those emotions. And we can also be proactive, right? If I'm overwhelmed, I need to do some things in my life that are going to help calm that overwhelm so that we don't experience all those emotions so strongly. So we can't always control the emotions that are coming in. We can do our best. Like, we can be as proactive as possible, right? If you're tired all the time, maybe you could really look at sleeping better or, getting the rest that you need. But we also need kind of a strategy for when we identify, hey, this is an emotion. I'm not eating because of hunger and fullness. And that's the first question I usually have people ask is you first have to identify, you name it. Hey, I know you're, and you name the emotion. You're fatigued, tired, stressed, right? And then from there, we ask ourselves, what do I need? And I like to make it really easy, the opposite of that. If you're stressed, you need calm, right? So then you ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do in this moment? Maybe I have 5 minutes, 30 seconds, 20 minutes. What will help me go from a place of stress to calm? And then you do that, and then you can come back and revisit. It's not so much the act of the eating, it's that we're using food to try to fix an emotion that it can't fix, right? It's a kind of a band-aid versus let's see if we can heal that emotion, and then we can revisit and say, am I still hungry? Do I still want that? And we can come from a place of confidence rather than that shame that usually happens.
I love what you just said. I'm like, I actually don't even know if you realize what you just said, but it was so profound. And that's that people typically need the opposite of what they feel.
Yeah.
I'm like, can that be a social media post? We'll quote you on that. I think that that's so beautiful. It's funny in my coaching, I do thoughts equal feelings equal emotion. So like, can we reverse engineer what we're thinking about? But I've never actually approached it from the standpoint that you just shared, that people typically need the opposite of what they feel. So if you're stressed, you need peace. If you're anxious, you need certainty. I don't know. I think that that's pretty profound, and I'm curious, what does that look like in a practical level with your coaching clients?
It looks different for everyone because what brings peace to someone might not bring peace to someone else, right? So I usually say have a little bit of a bank or a list for yourself that you can enjoy. So I know if I'm tired, my first my first go-to is, can I lay down? I have this yoga nidra I discovered several years ago when I was in a place of like chronic overwhelm, chronic stress. I was like feeling like I needed a nap every day. And I'm able to go back to that because it helped me so much. So if I have 20 minutes, I can go do that. If I have 10 minutes, I know that even if I can't lay down, if I can get a walk around my neighborhood that's like 10 minutes, I feel better. And so we just have to start creating a few things that make us feel that emotion, right? Maybe people like to journal or talk to a friend. And so if you have a list of things that you're like, okay, these are things that I know how they make me feel. I enjoy this. Some people like to be around people. Some people like to be alone. And if we understand those things about ourselves, then we can have a little list to say, I'm going to try this today. I'm going to go on a little walk. I'm going to come back and see how I feel. And I don't have to judge anything that happens there because I met that need and I don't have to like have expectations beyond that because I met that need.
I really enjoy the tactical nature of this conversation. I mean, this is the stuff that I thrive on. And I think about what you said before, which people could do right now. They don't have to wait to get started. If you just started thinking in this moment about the various emotions that you go through, whether on a daily basis or a weekly one, and the situations that you're in when that happens, already I guarantee that somebody could think of 2 or 3 different ways that they respond, whether that is, again, a food response or any other type of stress response that they're experiencing, and start to, as you said, build that bank of tools that you can use to help counteract that. But I just really appreciate, because I've never really thought about it that way myself. I know that I undergo stress. I know that I probably do respond to it in some way, shape, or form. But how many of us are being so proactive that before that actually happens, we're thinking about the ways that we typically respond and then coming up with a solution. So I think this is awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right reference, but I'm hoping it is. There's a book called Habit. I think it's by Charles Duhigg. But if you could visualize with me, he talks about habit loops, where you have a cue or a stimulus or an emotion that comes in, and then you have an action that you perform. And then there's an outcome or a reward for that. And a lot of us, kind of like you were mentioning, get stuck in that cycle where, oh, I have a cue of stress, or this used to be mine. I used to come home after a full day and I needed a treat. It was a reward for me for getting through the day. And it was very much a habit loop. Oh, I had an overwhelming day or I was stressed and I made it through the day. So ding, 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 I get a treat. And then the reward, is like, I got the treat. Usually it's shame and guilt, even though reward usually doesn't connect those two, but there is an outcome. And so what happens is a lot of us exist in those loops pretty, I guess you'd say, like, subconsciously. We don't pay attention. And what you're doing here is you're breaking that loop. We can't really control the emotions that are coming in. We're going to experience emotions. And we can tweak the outcome by changing the action, right? What do we do? So I'm experiencing an emotion. I can't control that, but I can control the action that I take to then give me the outcome that I want. And we just have to disrupt the negative loops that we have.
One emotion that I would love to pick your brain about is boredom. You have many, many people who they embark on this journey and they're actually doing really, really well. They're making the right, if you want to call it, the right food choices. They've worked really hard, and then at some point or another, they bring up the word boredom as if food is supposed to be thy entertainment, and now we're dealing with backsliding, right? Because that boredom turns into a binge. And I'm sure you've dealt with this before. So just talk to us a little bit about how you deal with those scenarios when people bring that up to you.
Boredom is a funny topic because it's interesting. I think a lot of people would say, "What? I'm not bored," but also I am bored. And it's because I think we're in a very busy lifestyle, right? We're in a busy environment, but boredom comes from lack of purpose. And we may be busy doing the things that we need to do. I'm a mom of 3. I'm always busy. but I find myself getting bored because I'm not doing things that fulfill me. And so it might be worth having, clients look at their level of fulfillment in their life, and their purpose. Because sometimes that boredom comes in when we're just going through the motions and checking things off the list rather than I have purpose. I am fulfilled with the things that I'm doing. So I don't necessarily have the chance to get bored. That doesn't mean that we're doing things all the time, but I have I think it really ties into the identity. My platform is a woman of wellness, and I really teach women to embrace that identity. I am a woman of wellness who, I make these choices because. And so if I get bored or I find myself wanting to kind of turn to food out of boredom, where is that coming from? Am I feeling that lack of fulfillment, that lack of purpose, rather than I just don't have anything to do?
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And it's great because you, again, highlighted a really important distinction there, that being one of just being busy, which all of us are busy. It's not hard to find new things to add to our checklist. In fact, we do that every single day. We strive to get the 15 things done in one day, and then as if we're going to actually feel fulfilled at the end of that, the next day we create a list of another 15 things to do. And we feel like only when we check all those things off will we be, quote, fulfilled, but we never are, right? And to your point, it's about having a larger purpose, something bigger to focus on. And I really like that because I think anyone can make that distinction for themselves and then ask the question, okay, what would give me more fulfillment? If it's not completing my checklist on a daily basis, like what are the things? No different than how you were talking about responding to emotions. If you're feeling one thing, you need the opposite thing. And if we're experiencing boredom, then actually what we're seeking is fulfillment.
You had a great video of that I saw, and it was, people are always looking off the same conversation. So I just want to tangent off that people are always looking to add more. Like, what do I need to add? What do I need to add? And your philosophy was you actually don't need to add anything else. It's actually what do we need to scale back on a little bit. So could you speak to that and the emotional eater?
Yeah. Yeah, there's this, I guess there's this understanding or belief, I think that's a better word, that health and wellness have to be hard and painful and it has to consume your life. And I would agree that some of that is true. Like we want to feel good and it takes energy and effort to support our bodies. But why wouldn't we want that to be our biggest priority? Because our body is what helps us show up in bigger ways, right? It helps me be on this podcast and have clarity of mind and have energy, right? And so people look at health and wellness as one more thing to do. So we start coming in and saying, okay, let's work on mindful eating. Let's implement a nutrition strategy because you need a nutrition strategy to help you recognize those cues. If you're eating bagels all day long, your body's not going to give you the right cues for hunger and fullness, right? So then we've got to implement a nutrition strategy and we need some exercise. And so it can, at the beginning, it can feel like a lot. And I always tell people, meet yourself where you are. We're not going 10 steps ahead of where you are. We're going to start here and meet you where you are. And then we're going to learn how to implement what you want into the lifestyle you want, right? What is your vision of health? Yours looks different than mine. I have a woman in my membership she doesn't really care so much about her weight, but she says she wants to be able to water ski in a moo when she's 80. And she's like, I just want to be healthy enough to do that, right? And I'm like, that is a beautiful vision for her. And there are certain things that she needs to do to maintain her lifestyle that helps support that vision. So when we can get away from this is a lot of to-dos, right? People say, just tell me what to eat. I don't want to spend any time in the kitchen versus, you know what? This is an opportunity and a gift to nourish my body. And I don't have to make it a ton extra. Okay. We don't have to look at it that way, but would it be okay for me to spend a little bit more time on my body? And with that relationship, maybe a little bit more time in the kitchen making healthy meals because it pays off for me. It feels better for me. And I can still fit that into my lifestyle, right? I don't have to make everything from scratch, or it doesn't have to all be organic, or I don't have to do CrossFit. Maybe I like to walk and strength train, or maybe I like to swim. And if we can pick the things that fit your desired lifestyle, your vision of health, then it becomes no longer a to-do list and like these are essentials for me to show up the way that I want to.
Beautiful. I love that. I just want to actually commend you. I love that you know that about one of your clients. I think we live in this very silly social media world where it's like, look at my perfect aesthetic day and all the things. I don't want to say it's rare, but I think it's very inspiring that you care and are and that invested in your clients to be able to say, like, I know this client and this is what she wants at 80 years old. I mean, it made us smile when you said it. So purpose is incredibly important.
So what does a healthy body look like? I mean, we're touching a lot on again, the body being at the root of a lot of the challenges that we're seeing. So what does a healthy body look like?
If you can show up and do the things that you love to do with your body, that's a healthy body. I This is interesting. This will go back to some of my story. I spent a lot of years in corporate wellness, and we used to test people's biomarkers to determine what their insurance levels, like their insurance rates were. So if they had certain, like their cholesterol levels, their blood pressure, blood sugars, weight, BMI, like we took all these things, and if they had a particular like three or more comorbidities, essentially, they had to work with me as their coach to help kind of change. And then they would get like a discount on their insurance and all of that. And it's interesting because back then I was like, this is the right way to do it. This is the right way to do it. But I started to work with a client because she had some things out of range. And I learned really quickly that there was some genetic component. Like she would exercise, she wrote down her food for me. And I was like, man, you're doing pretty good. There's some things off that maybe, there's some genetics here, like cholesterol and stuff. Um, but it was so interesting because I think I had a vision, like you said, like, what does a healthy body look like? I had a vision. What does it look like on paper? Right? What do these numbers look like? And some of these numbers are very important. I don't want to discount that at all, right? I mean, if we have insulin resistance, that's going to lead to some tricky things down the road. But I think sometimes we try to create a meaning to the numbers when what if instead we created a meaning to the feelings? And I do things a little differently. I'm a little different. I always tell people to focus on feelings. It's okay to set some goals. It's good to have number goals and things like that. But also, what does it feel like to be healthy? If I came in with a video camera in your home today, what would you be doing? How would you feel? How would you show up? Do you feel confident in your clothes? Do you feel confident in your choices? I would say we could look at that and say that's a healthy body, and I don't have to know any number about them.
I love your answer because we live in such a data-driven world now too. I mean, you could put on a watch, a ring, and have all these data points, and people drive themselves bonkers trying to hit these particular numbers, not realizing that that might not be a number that's suitable to you. And whenever we have somebody come into any of our training studios or enter our online program, I mean, the first thing that they say is they give us a number in terms of how much weight they want to lose, not knowing whether or not they are going to actually look their best or feel their best at that particular number. And I like this subjectivity of just being able to say, hey, you know what? I feel confident. My clothes feel good. I like who I see when I look in the mirror. And those to me are just as important as any data points. I mean, to exactly the point that you made, we do need to know some data points. They are important, right? Because they act as guide rails, if you will, for keeping us healthy and maybe optimizing our health. But at the end of the day, those are not the things that make or break us, but how we feel emotionally. And I know this sounds so weird coming from me, right? I mean, you're like, who am I talking to right now?
He's like so nerding out on this
We've
episode.
created an identity shift.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back and yes, continue on,
funny.
Mike.
No, but I always felt like, though, it is very important for people to just simply feel a certain way, because especially you coming from the personal training background, you know that if somebody is truly engaging in high quality resistance training, they're building muscle, they're burning body fat, you're going to have these like 1-for-1 swaps of a increase of 1 pound of muscle, a decrease in 1 pound of fat, completely different body, same weight on the scale. But who should really complain about that? I mean, isn't that ultimately what even most women are looking for? They're looking for a change in their body composition, not necessarily a number on their scale. They just relate it to a point that they passed at some time along their journey. And when I was at that point, that is, I think when I looked my best, I think I felt my best, but they don't even truly know half the time.
Yeah, it's true.
And you mentioned feeling, and I want to add, can your body do what you want it to do as well? So right now I'm training for a Spartan race, which is like an obstacle course race. I've never done one. I'm a year postpartum. So like, I've got to rebuild some things in my body, and I've been working on pull-ups, and I swear they're the hardest things ever to do in the gym. I told my husband the other day, I'm like, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to figure this out. But it's interesting because I was kind of on my own little like weight loss journey, I was about a year postpartum. And when I stopped nursing, my body just regains weight. It's happened 3 out of 3 kids. It's like, it just happens. And so I'm like, okay, I'm trying to kind of return my body to where it feels its best. And then I decided I want to do this Spartan. And so I've kind of just been tracking, and my weight has stayed very much the same. But I can tell like my muscles are getting stronger. I've been lifting a lot heavier. I've been doing a lot more at the gym. And here's the thing, the message of diet culture is a number, a weight number. But what you brought in and what I love so much is, let's stray away from the weight number and recognize feelings and doings. I don't know if that's the right word, but what you can do, and know that that number doesn't give you a whole picture of your body. We could do body fat if that's helpful for some people, right? Maybe they like that and it's motivating, but recognizing that, oh, I can do more things too. And that's just as good as maybe seeing a number on the scale. I'd say better, because the number on the scale we attach to our identity, right? We lose weight, we're good. We gain weight, we're bad. Whereas when we're trying to work toward a goal that we can do something or accomplish something or feel better, it builds that confidence rather than puts like an identity on us that's negative.
Yeah. I love this so much. And I will just say, as a serial scale watcher growing up, I mean, every morning and then the afternoon and then the evening, I'm like, how did I gain 2 pounds in a day? Like, how is that even possible? I don't think I've stepped on a scale in 4 years.
No.
3 years. No, maybe like 3, maybe 2.5 or 3. Yeah. Don't care, right? Love how I feel. Not looking like, oh my gosh, should I eat this thing? What are people going to think when I eat it? I mean, I think people have no idea how freeing it is to come over to the other side, but it does require that boring work, which is why I love that it's so important and you emphasize to have a purpose. I mean, right now, you training for a Spartan, that's a whole lot of purpose, because you can't show up to that race weak. Right? You better be strong for that race, and strong. And let's just throw out a number. Like I'm, and you may disagree with this, but strong and 160 pounds is better than I hit my goal of 127 pounds, but I feel like absolute trash and I'm weak. And I'm not saying that a weight means that you're strong or weak, but people get so fixated on like, oh my gosh, I was 138 pounds when I felt my best. Like, I need to hit that number. Dude, you may be 145 and feel freaking amazing. That's good, right? Mental clarity wins over what the scale is telling you. True or true?
And I always think too, like, as coaches, sometimes we create these experiments on ourselves. And I was kind of doing that. I was like, okay, I don't own a scale, but at the gym there's a scale. And so I just have been getting on every week. And it's been so interesting for me to like just process my thoughts. about it, to help me maybe get in the mindset of other women that may be struggling. I know I don't experience all the same things, but there have been those moments where I'm like, well, I'm doing more. Why am I not going down? And processing that, right? That's so important. And I think it's yeah, I just amen to all of this.
Well,
Well,
I do think it's important because, again, you want to be able to speak from somebody's perspective. And because we may go into that situation and not allow it to ruin our day, that the scale moved in one direction or the other, we can actually try to figure out, okay, what is that data point telling me? And sometimes it's telling us, oh, I actually need to ease off the gas a little bit. Maybe I've been pushing a little bit too hard, and now I'm, suppressing my metabolism, and my body's not working as efficiently as it should be at this point in time. Maybe at other times it is telling us, you know what, you've been getting a little lax with the way that you've been eating and allowing certain things to creep back in. Maybe it's time to just, again, reassess where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I don't think that it's a problem for people to weigh themselves, but again, how are you using the data? That is ultimately what it comes down
yes,
to.
how you're, I mean, I totally get what Elizabeth is saying, and I'm there too. Like you tie meaning to it. Like we always say, like data over drama. If you're somebody that we need to just get some data points, like the sky is blue, the grass is green, this is my weight. Like it's just a number. But it's like, to your point, teaching women how to separate that emotion from the data point. Don't make it dramatic.
Well, and it leads you to create action. So I just got myself a little cheap pedometer because I am feeling like my steps are a little bit low. My baby does not like being in the stroller right now, which is very frustrating for me. And so I thought, you know what? I want to look at my steps because I am trying to improve my fitness and all of this. And so that's one data point that I want to look at. I want to evaluate, like you were talking, right? I want to see where am I at? And then what can I do better to support my body? And so we have those things where we can say, hey, this is something I want to improve on. I want to see where I'm at and then set a goal to improve that. And that's just helpful. It kind of creates some motivation as well.
So good. Well, this is an amazing conversation, and I know that you have you have a freebie, a free mindful eating meditation download, and you have a Healthy Habits membership. So why don't you tell our listeners where they can get a hold of those?
Yeah. So if we want to include the download in the show notes, it's a really great place to start. If you feel like a chaotic eater, if you're struggling with emotional eating, we've got to build that foundation of mindful eating. So it's a 6-minute audio meditation. You just sit down, you listen to it while you're eating something, and it just helps you with that potty training, right? It helps you like recognize those cues, and then we can listen to it. You can download it, listen to it a few times, and it will help with being able to connect with those cues. And then if you're someone that's like, I struggle starting over, that is the biggest thing, right? Is like, I start and I stop and I start and I sabotage. If you struggle with being consistent with your habits, I have a Healthy Habits membership. It's called our Women's Wellness Hub, where I help you create sustainable habits. There's 4 core habits that you need to create to be able to achieve any health goal that you have or any health outcome that you have. And so I just walk you through being able to implement it into your life, just like we talked about earlier, not adding more things, but how do we fit it into our life? So if anyone's struggling with that start over, constantly starting over, that's a really great place to start as well.
Nice.
Elizabeth, really enjoyed this conversation. We just thank you so much for coming on the show today. We will definitely be sure to link all of those things in our show notes. And any other parting words, or better yet, do you have any other parting words or anything that we left out that you'd like to say before we go?
Maybe a parting word could be just remember that you are capable of knowing and meeting the needs of your own body. And as soon as you know that, you start to build trust, and you don't have to worry about the noise that's out there because you have the ability to meet those needs.
Well, everyone, that is our show for today. We want to thank all of you guys for joining us, and just remember, you were creating on purpose for a purpose. And until next time, we will catch you guys later.